Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Mr. Bill Kelly.
Bill, please. Here's another distinguished presenter who needs no introduction, Bill Keller.
Thank you. Thank you. And Stacy, you might want to start making your way to the front because I'm going to be the only speaker tonight who stays within his time limit. Under the circumstances, I thought about opening it with a joke about Mormon missionaries in France. But every decent Mormon joke, along with a fair number of indecent Mormon jokes, has been pressed into service on Broadway, so I'll just leave it to your imagination. My happy and brief duty tonight is to present Stacy Schiff with this year's Vergennes Achievement Award, and then to get out of the way so that she can brighten our evening with her words. Maybe she's got a Mormons in France joke. I have to start by taking note of Stacy's impressively multilateral relationship with my newspaper. She has filled in for both Maureen Dowd and David Brooks, which suggests, at the very least, a high degree of versatility. She has reviewed books for us, and she has been reviewed, always favorably, sometimes ecstatically. She has been interviewed for Up Front in the book review and Questions For in the magazine. She was the subject, she might say target, of a Public Lives column in which Joyce Wadler tried valiantly but fruitlessly to pry open the author's private life. Stacy has also made the news pages as the recipient of the Pulitzer Prize and many other honors, of which tonight's award is the Glaçage sur le Gâteau. An interviewer in the Times, of course, once asked Stacy what her subjects have in common, and she replied, "I'm a sucker for lost worlds." And there's no question that among the greatest of her gifts is the ability to conjure. Cleopatra's Alexandria, Benjamin Franklin's Paris, the many cities of the émigré Nabokovs, all of them became found worlds, living, three-dimensional worlds in her hands. The other things that her subjects tend to have in common is France. The one notable exception, I must say, is Cleopatra, although I think Cleopatra figures in some Asterix cartoons. The Gauls are notably absent from Stacy's wonderfully imagined evocation of the Egyptian queen. But her biography of the French writer and aviator Antoine de Saint-Exupéry was her first Pulitzer finalist. Her life of Vera Nabokov, which won the Pulitzer, includes a period in France where the novelist and his amazing wife settled for a time. Stacy has constructed between America and France one particularly splendid bridge. It's called A Great Improvisation, Franklin, France, and the Birth of America. Her account of Franklin's 8-year charm offensive, which brought America arms, ammunition, cash, and men to help win its freedom, was widely praised as a major contribution to Franklin's scholarship. It's also a lively Franco-American yarn. When I hear American politicians of a particular orientation sneering at France, usually for its small s socialist social contract, I wonder whether they realize that France essentially bankrolled our own revolution. You might think a little gratitude was in order, particularly since the alliance left France on the verge of bankruptcy, and in the end the Americans jilted France and signed a separate peace with Britain. The French statesman who yielded to Franklin's charm and to what he perceived as France's self-interest was the Comte de Vergennes, for whom tonight's award is named. It seems especially apt that he is one of the many characters that Stacy has discovered in her exploration of lost worlds. I expect he would be pleased to see her honored for her cultural contribution to French-American relations. I think I'm supposed to present you with this. just set it down.
I think to reveal that I have filled in for both Maureen Dowd and David Brooks is just to reveal that I have no political convictions, which on a night like tonight is probably appropriate. If I call Europe, what number do I call? Asked an American statesman in the 1970s. That was, of course, Henry Kissinger. In the 1770s, the answer was obvious. Especially if you had a grievance with Great Britain, you rang up Versailles. And when you did that, you got the masterful French foreign minister, the Count de Vergennes. Vergennes was famously clear-spoken and clear-headed, but from my point of view when I was researching my book on Benjamin Franklin's years in France, what I was most grateful for was his clear penmanship. Don't underestimate how far that goes when it comes to the writing of history. I will admit that there's very little of Lafayette in my book on Franklin in France for the simple reason that I can't read Lafayette's handwriting. And when I shamefacedly admitted this to the great historian Peter Gay, Peter said, "But clearly you don't know Gay's Law of History." And I said, "No, Peter, what's that?" And he said, "If you can't read it, it didn't happen." Vergennes was the godfather of the Franco-American relationship. As foreign minister under Louis XVI, he'd been eyeing a revolution in America nearly as long as the colonists had. He wanted only to humble the British for his own reasons, and it was he who convinced Louis XVI to underwrite this republic. Without France, there would have been no American Revolution. The guns fired at Saratoga were French. When the British surrendered at Yorktown, they did so to forces that were equal parts French and American, and were fed and clothed and paid by France and surrounded by a French navy. Vergennes spent a great deal of time as well reassuring Louis XVI that France had nothing to fear from a republic on these shores because America had no future. The North and the South were wholly incompatible. As for democracies, everyone knew they could not endure. Moreover, before America could possibly become powerful in any way, she would be infected by the vices of France, which would retard her growth. In this, of course, Vergennes anticipated by a few hundred years Clemenceau, who termed America the only nation in history to have passed directly from barbarism to degeneration without the customary interval of civilization. At the outset, the incomprehension between the two countries was extreme. Americans knew France only for its depravity. On arriving in Paris, Abigail Adams